Yeah, what's up, guys? It's Yeti here. Welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be breaking down the skill required in Mythic Plus. I want to draw a line of comparison between tanks, healers, and DPS. And of course, I want to also compare the statistical data of World of Warcraft to a game I used to play a lot in the past and I still play nowadays, League of Legends. The reason I chose League of Legends is because it's probably the most competitive game. It also has some of the best, statistical data websites out there, and it has such a massive player pool that you can draw a lot of conclusions from just looking at the data and looking at where the players are on the leaderboard, and it's kind of easy to compare how things would be in World of Warcraft and how things already are in World of Warcraft, where we should draw the line of achievements, portals, things of that sort. So that's one of the things I want to talk about today. And obviously one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is because people are protesting in the game right now because they are not getting invited into 12s on non-meta classes, which has happened in M+ since it came out. And, there's a new update that is live in European servers right now. Was already live in NA yesterday, 11.0.5, which is a great update, but it's not going to probably change anything. Classes will still be meta. And also, if we just look at the data from really far away right now, we have one of the healthiest breakdowns for DPS classes we've had in a while. And tanks are probably in their healthiest state they have been, period, which is crazy because, I'm a tank player myself. And originally when I was playing Warrior, I was like, okay, nothing will ever top this class. But it seems like other classes are scaling really, really well with gear. And overall, the curve looks really healthy right now. And I'm super happy about that. First of all, I want to talk about Keystone popularity, the amount of people playing each key level and why it's relevant to World of Warcraft. So if we look at the graph of the amount of people doing keys and we ignore the key number 2 because it's obviously what every single person does that's not even going to play WoW a lot, and then we ignore keys above 11, we have a pretty healthy triangle curve, which means there's more people on either left or right. We have a weird dip at rank 6 for some reason. It's probably because, you want to hit those key levels where you get appropriate crests dropping. But that doesn't really matter. That's just a World of Warcraft flavor when it comes to, deciding which difficulty to play. But overall, it looks pretty healthy. The amount of people doing +10s is really, really high. And is a little bit lower than people that they're doing 9s, and people are doing 9s is almost the same number that they're doing 3s, right? So as I said, we have this little healthy curve in a way of people doing keys. And then if we look at the percentages of people that have finished all dungeons, which is obviously a good difficulty to go by, if you have finished all dungeons at +10 and you're roughly at 2560 rating, you're already top 5%, which I think is really cool. Again, that means probably in league terms you were somewhere along platinum, you're already playing the game a lot, you're tryharding. And then if you've done all keys on a +12, you're basically already entering the title range, which is great because +12s are where the difficulty ramps up quite a lot. You have to really understand the dungeons, you have to do good damage. Yeah, I think this is healthy. I think right now the percentages really make sense. Of course, these things might develop a little bit more in the following weeks, when we get more people doing higher key levels because the item level is going up and your player power is also going up. But I think it's pretty healthy as of right now, and I like how these numbers stand. Now, of course, I want to define the words skill floor and skill ceiling because I'll be talking about these today when I'll be comparing the roles. So skill floor to me is kind of like the required knowledge you need to be playing a certain class, while skill ceiling, of course, it can be class or role, while skill ceiling is the maximum amount of knowledge you can contribute to a team. Of course, DPS, tank, and healers have much different curves and requirements, and I want to talk about some of that today. So first of all, DPS is the most popular role to play. You need 3 of them in each Mythic Plus run. You can play all different kind of DPS, and generally speaking, there's a big difference already between playing a BM Hunter or playing Sub Rogue in terms of skill required to perform your normal rotation. Of course, ranged and melee can have a much harder or easier time depending on the encounter or depending on the dungeon sometimes. But I want to talk more about the fundamentals of the role. So interrupts, CC, non-damage globals that help the party. Almost all of these are going to be kind of relevant to DPS role as a whole. And they will not really be required. Like up until plus 10s, you pretty much are only supposed to do damage. Well, not supposed to, but you only need to do damage to pass the key. The more smart moves you do before that are, is going to benefit your party. Using a single target stun on a mob that can be stunned to prevent the damage being dealt to your tank frees up multiple globals from him, and then he can do more for the party, or he can do more damage. It's almost always beneficial to use your utility in the proper way, right? Another good example is if you are playing a paladin, you have Blessing of Protection, Blessing of Freedom. Both of these have really, really good interactions that can be used on many mobs, bosses, packs, etc. to ignore damage, to speed up your run. Sometimes you can straight up mitigate, like completely ignore damage with those mechanics, because some of them are the application of damage is coded into a CC ability that can be ignored by Blessing of Freedom and things of that sort. I'm just speaking from experience here. There's so much more your class can do, and that's why I always recommend, when you are maining a class, watch a really high M+ streamer play that specific class, and you're going to learn so much, right? That's going to actually directly benefit you. Like I, for example, I'm playing Guardian Druid right now, and whenever I watch somebody who's doing plus 16s, like a completely cracked Guardian Druid, I learn so much every single run they do. And I'm somebody who is constantly reading online and constantly learning, and it's still now, when I'm watching a streamer, I'm learning almost every single run. Now, of course, I want to make a bit of a dive into the tank and healer requirements that I spoke about earlier. My fundamentals when it comes to tanks and healers changes a little bit. This is also why I very often recommend people to play DPS first, because DPS can still learn these fundamental checks, so to speak, but they don't really need to know them to play the game. A perfect example would be Tank Busters. Tank Busters are abilities that happen every, 30 seconds on a boss fight, and that can and very often will one-shot your tank unless they have a buster ready for every single tank buster. Very often when a tank dies, your whole team will die right after, because the boss will just start running at them and they will get all one shot. Your tank can get combat res, but that's not something you should rely on. And the exact same things goes for healers. So there are many fights where boss does some sort of pulsating AoE damage, and you need to have healing cooldowns ready for all of them. Otherwise, people will just die. Both of these things I mentioned are, relevant when you get to higher key levels, but higher key levels is really different based on what time of the seasons you're doing, right? So if you're a Mythic Raider and you want to fill up your plus 10 vault week 1, then it doesn't really matter what item level you are. You're going to have to play these dungeons correctly. If you're playing later on in the season, of course, your item level will be a lot higher, and you're going to reach these these requirements or these points of getting one shot a little bit later on. But if you want to play Mythic Plus and you want to be a relevant Mythic Plus player, a good Mythic Plus player, you should always learn these. Even if you could, technically speaking, just overheal by hard casting because you have that much gear, it's still going to make it easier and better and more fun if you use your cooldowns at the right time. That's just how Mythic Plus works. That's why Mythic Plus is a progression system and not just like something you do once and then never do it again. Now that brings me to the next point, the impact of role selection on Mythic Plus success. So as you know, there is very often a Mythic Plus meta composition, and they do present a problem, and I think there's also a big failure to understand something about meta compositions. You do not always need to run the meta comp. A good example is Rogue, Mage, Evoker, and then the best healer and the best tank of that season. That is not something that you need to necessarily run to have success in Mythic Plus, and many teams are actually proving this at the highest level. People are doing plus 15s on, non-meta classes because, as I said earlier, every single healer and tank is pretty much seeing relevancy in this season. The problem that a lot of streamers, when they are just saying play whatever you want or play whatever comp you want, is that any team works is false. You still need things in your class to make the key doable and also enjoyable to do. I think enjoying your time in a key is as important as finishing the key, because if you're not having fun, you're probably not going to go do another key, in the following week, in the same week, whatever. A perfect example is playing a very heavy ranged caster team where you do not have enough interrupts. Just imagine playing a Boomkin and a Shadow Priest, and then you already have two classes that have pretty much no kicks, and then you don't take a Shaman Healer. Let's say you take take a Druid Healer as well. There we go. We have three classes that cannot interrupt. This is going to make your Mythic Plus run super painful and tedious to do. Yeah, sure, you can still time all 10s. You can probably even time all 12s with that composition, but it's just not going to be fun. And I think this is something that you have to always look at, objectively, take a step back, learn what classes bring. And, again, this is kind of where your skill as a DPS player tank is going to come in, because a skilled player, in my opinion, also knows what utility they have available, what utility their teammates have available, and they can kind of, in a way, know, obviously inside the run, what utility do we have for the next pack? But when you're forming a group, you have to already think, okay, we're doing mists. What do we need for mists? What kind of relevant skills do classes bring for mists to make it easier? Perfect example is, you want a shaman that will break your fear on the first boss. So you're going to take a shaman healer. Okay, right now shaman healers are broken, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? Like, you have to understand these things, both inside and outside of the game, to make Mythic Plus more enjoyable for yourself. So this has been a pretty messy video so far. I had a lot of these thoughts going into this video, and I wanted to draw a conclusion about, which role has the highest skill cap, which role you should play, and, what should you care about your Mythic Plus rating. And I would advise everyone to pick a class they enjoy, and obviously try all roles / all specs inside their class. Obviously not at a high level, but this is something you should try to understand Mythic Plus from as many players' point of views as possible. Okay, if you're playing a mage, you're gonna have all three ranged mage specs. If you're playing a warlock, the same thing will happen. There are so many classes that can try a different specialization that is going to give them a completely different point of view for Mythic Plus that is going to make you a better player as a whole. I think once you understand how tank busters work and how healing checks work, the AoE pulsating damage, and I think only that way you can truly understand is if you have multiple POVs and you've tried doing the key on different roles, or as I said, watch enough educational videos or play with your friends on voice chat. Recording your gameplay and keeping a rotation animation on screen is key for improvement. This is something I do all the time. When I started learning Bear, I would just, pop my stream open and I would have the details streamer plug it in the corner, and I would very often see where I actually completely misspent my rage, or I used an ability like Rejuvenation to shift out of Bear form because I'm stupid. Another great way to improve your experience in Mythic Plus and to get better as a player is obviously to be on voice chat with your friends and give each other feedback in a nice, non-negative way. Don't flame each other, just help each other out. That's going to really help, because you're going to have people in your key that are experiencing that key from a different point of view in real time while you're playing with them. And that's great, because when you're pugging, most of the time people cannot give you feedback. Even if somebody in your key is really, really good and has the ability to give you feedback, more often than not, they're going to be playing their class and they can't really be vocal about the feedback to make you a better player. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching. Drop a like and subscribe to see more, and I'll see you guys around. Peace out.